What's shaking, everybody? Welcome to another edition of that Monday Overreaction show right here on the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson. Today, we are not wearing colors that are anywhere remotely the same, so you will know which one of us is which throughout the episode. Look, this thing is brought to you by RogueShop.com. God, I don't know if that's a new logo or not, but I like it. Use that promo code Orangebloods for your 25% off discount for Texas's home for legal CBD, THC, and so much more. Anwar and I both love our Rogue Shop products. There's so many to choose from. Anwar, just pick a random one.
Like, the cartridges, I think I just had was it like a Zool the other day, I believe. I believe that's what it's called. And that one was really good.
Cartridges make life better.
It makes everything better. I'll be honest with you, Catch. I don't want to go too far off the rails, but with the thing is like fentanyl, you hear crazy stuff about fentanyl, people dying of fentanyl. So I'm like, man, you need to go and get yourself some CBD and relax, because I don't know what's out there on them streets. I don't want no parts of it. So give me my Rogue products. Give me the stuff when they ship it to you. You've got, thank you, the Azulberry. You've got the paperwork. I know where I got it from, who did what. I got everything I need. I'm legit. I feel comfortable. So thank you, Richard, and his amazing wife. What do you like? Which one is for you?
I mean, it's hard not to just go away from the cartridges. Get me feeling just the right way through without going too far ever, unless you eat a whole bunch of gummies together because you think that your weight class will support double the gummies is not always double the fun.
Can I tell a story real quick?
Sure, let's get off it's spring break. If we're gonna get off the rails, let's just do it early. And who knows, we may stay off the rails the entire show.
This is so embarrassing. I should not be admitting this. There's a part of me that says so. Anyway, I got one of the Richard sent me one of those, and it was like I didn't realize how potent one of those gummies were, but it was the highest of high. And so I took one, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go to sleep and relax. And I woke up the next morning, it was like sometime last year. And I woke up the next morning, I was like, man, I am still feeling lightheaded. And I had to go out to Sarkeesian that day. And I was just the amount of focus that I had to have that day to get through was really intense. I've not taken that one particular gummy since.
Don't over gummy. That'd be the one thing we would say.
Yes.
We would say just what? Look at Blake, our producer, trying to get us back.
Okay.
Focus.
It's spring break, man. We're talking about everything today.
Also want to remind everybody that you can get that free Orangebloods promo right now. In the last 24 hours, we've had my 10 thoughts from the weekend, Anwar's Sunday pulpit. We've had basketball and baseball coverage out the wazoo. Cole and Jason were at the Under Armour event yesterday. So lots of recruiting news. And the War Room was like 3 or 4 days ago. And yet I promise you, even in something 3 or 4 days ago, you're still getting information that people who aren't on Orangebloods just won't get, period. So take advantage of that. Use that free trial. There's the barcode right there. Use that Texas 30 promo code. You get the next month for free. That's basically the rest of spring football. I will say it every time we mention this promo. If we can't keep you after you've been on the site for a month, then I don't know those people really. I rarely come across the person who says, gave that free promo a look, and then, I was bored. Just doesn't happen that way. So anyway, let's get started. Real quick, Eric, just because we want to make sure you get in, you deserve, both you and Tom G. We'll get to this in a second. Name Rodney Terry, head coach, Final Four bust. Hold that thought, Eric. Tom G says, Eric loses QB2 battle when his horse can't leave the barn.
This is Malik. It's a Malik Murphy reference.
Oh,
so he's
the horse that can't get out of the barn.
Yes, and so on the show, Eric has stood on the table for Malik Tom stood on the table for Arch. And so this is them continuing that battle.
Fair enough.
And Tom being petty and not letting it go, which you and I kind of enjoy pettiness.
We thrive in it. Onward, we'll get to Texas football today for sure, right? Of course we will. Probably focusing on some bigger 30,000 feet up pictures of what we saw through the first 3 practices out of 15. Still a long way to go as the football team takes spring break. Got to lead off, though, with Texas basketball. They win the conference tournament this weekend for only the second time in its history, but weirdly the second time in 3 years. People kind of forget that about 5 minutes before he was fired, Shaka Smart won the conference tournament 3 years ago. Rodney Terry and this group of Texas Longhorns do it again this year. They're a number 2 seed. It's one of the best basketball teams in the history of the program, and we should probably acknowledge their big achievement of they're hot right now. I mean, they beat 3 tournament teams and the last team out in a span of 7 days. It should be a team that going into the tournament everybody's high on. That potential second round matchup with Texas A&M, though, has a chance to be the thing that next Monday will definitely define our conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I think from a big picture perspective, Catch, it's one of the best coaching jobs that we've seen. Forget should he get a job at Texas, or then we just deal with the moment where we're at and not big picture, but just today. When you inherit a team that is going through the things that this team was going through at that moment, it would have been really easy for it to, fracture, for there just to be a lot of issues. I mean, this is like a lot of negative energy that was out there, so I know Rodney Terry gets the credit, but there's also other guys on the staff that help to keep this together. I think it speaks to the maturity that's on that team, right? Because they have one of the more older, more seasoned kind of teams, in the country that's out there. I forget what that statistic looks like, but so just to be able to hold it together and then just take it to Kansas. I mean, just take it to Kansas in the way, like it was like 20 points at one point. Catch, I'm watching it, dang. I'm like, damn, this team is beating the crap out of Kansas. Wow. I mean, so it to me is one of the better coaching jobs just overall that I've seen. Is one of the best, most mature teams that I've seen. And kudos to everyone involved. I have another reaction to that, but kudos to everyone involved in that.
Plus 36 against Kansas over the span of 2 games. And Kansas was all set to be the number 1 overall seed. Texas wipes the floor with them twice.
Yes.
One on a neutral site floor, which ain't neutral at all if you've ever been to that tournament. I mean, it's in Kansas. You when you fly to go to Kansas games, you fly into Kansas City. So it is as home court of an advantage as one could have in a conference tournament setting. And phenomenal job. I'm with you. Kudos to everyone. I don't know that I would go quite so far as to say it's one of the best coaching jobs I've ever seen. It's a really good job. He gets an A for me. Whether it's an A or an A minus or an A plus is probably dictated, not even probably, almost certainly dictated by what happens now. Because as Shaka Smart, you can come in like second or third place in the tournament in a season and have a 3 seed and win the conference championship and lose your job. If you lose in the first round, if you don't make it to the Sweet 16. So in a lot of ways, this team's, the final memory we have of it hasn't yet been defined. I think this will be, a lot of people will think this is an overreaction on a Monday. I think the key to this team is less about Rodney Terry's coaching and more to do with the fact that, and you hear it in every broadcast when the team gets brought up, someone will say, it has the 7th most experience in college basketball this year. And I don't have the chart in front of me. I've never been told who the other 6 teams are that have this much experience. I do know that I've watched a lot of Texas basketball over the course of the last decade. And it almost feels like there's never any experience, or there's a couple of older guys, but you're always – previous Texas teams would have taken a guy like Dylan Mitchell and really leaned on him, so that when the tournament starts, how a freshman performs is a really big part of the storyline for this team and program. This year, it's just seniors everywhere. You know, so Serge Rice is like close to getting his pension at Texas at this point. I mean, he's a 6th-year guy. He's in his mid-20s now. Marcus Carr is an older player. I think of the Brock Cunninghams and the Dylan Dessous, and up and down this lineup, they've got like 5 or 6 seniors that have each played 4, 5, or 6 years of basketball. When I watch this team, I think the thing I really say more than anything else is, can this team come back next year? Because watching in college basketball a team with this amount of experience play together, they never – and look, this next part can be about coaching too. They never seem like they don't know what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, you don't watch a lot of Texas, but they can go through a cold stretch where they're not making shots like any other team. But you never stand around and wonder, what are they doing? And so I think Rodney Terry does get credit for that, because it's not by accident that a team plays well together. But all of this experience, there will be a time in the next couple of years when this team turns over where Texas won't be this experienced, where they have to lean on more freshmen or young players in general than they are this season. And I think we will be reminded, oh, man, it was really important to have this many older players on the team. But Rodney Terry's done a fantastic job. I don't know that my opinion about whether or not he should be the Texas head coach in the future has changed. He's the perfect guy for this year, but you're not hiring a head coach for this year. You're hiring a head coach for future years. And that future coach will have to build future teams out of different players. And I don't know that Rodney Terry's the right guy for that. But I will say this, and I wrote this in my column on War at 10 Thoughts from the Weekend, which you can read over at orangebloods.com. I'm not like some heartless bastard. You can see this team loving Rodney Terry. Right? I mean, when that was over, when they beat Kansas on Saturday, you can see a group of guys love their guy. But maybe the Charlie Strong thing is still in my mind because it's still so recent. But I can remember half the football team showing up at a press conference because they loved Charlie Strong. And sometimes the best answer to a question is the least emotional driven one. And I think that the decision that Chris Del Conte will have to make is who's the best possible hire that can be made. And if it's not Rodney Terry, like, how close do you think they are? Is there a big gap or a small gap? If there's a big gap, it's a no-brainer. If it's a small gap, maybe it's not. And if he keeps I've got Texas in the Final Four. If Texas makes the Final Four, Rodney Terry's going to be the next head coach. And I think if you're a Texas basketball fan and you haven't been to the Sweet 16 in like a decade and a half, good, bad, whatever would happen under Rodney Terry beyond that, you just live in your Final Four season and be happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, Catch, the good part for Rodney Terry is that he's going to have options. So, he's going from a guy that was kind of a, assistant coach and just kind of, just that's my role, to now, look, man, if Texas doesn't want Rodney Terry, another program will. I mean, I
question that to some degree. I think most schools would look at Rodney Terry and say, it depends on the level of the school, but like Fresno State and UTEP level schools will look at what he did at Fresno and and UTEP, and they'll go, "Oh, it didn't work there with a 10-year sample size." Just to be clear, in 10 years, a decade as a head coach, he's barely a 500 coach. He went to one NCAA tournament. Like, it wasn't happening for him. And I think if you're not Texas and you've got no emotion, no skin in the game, I think you have a lot more questions about what's more real, what he did and what he built over a decade, or what him taking over a team that was already in the top 10 when he got the job, built by another coach. Is that more of who he is? Look, I don't know that I have the answer. But I am a data-driven guy, and the data says slow down.
Oh, I mean, but you can't ignore today, right? So you can't ignore that he's
coaching another man's team.
But he's coaching them well. So
yes,
I mean, like, so that so you got to give him
credit.
Only
a sliver of the job.
But and you're ignoring the other areas.
Player that he's acquisition is the single most important aspect of college basketball.
But you're ignoring the other areas that he's excelling at. So every area that he's excelling at, you're kind of poo-pooing in at this
moment.
What
areas are those?
I've told you his ability to keep a team together, to his ability to have a team, be a leader. You said like for these guys to essentially like love him, right, and do those type of things. So he's been able to, which is hard to do, keep a team together. This team has recovered a lot from the freaking Rice game. From that Rice game that had to go into overtime, where we thought to ourselves, what in the hell is this team going to look like, to the team that kicked ass against Kansas? We've seen this team get better, as the year went by. Like, at the end of the day, you can inherit someone, but you still got to coach it. You still got to be able to do it. I'm not standing on the table and saying he has to be the guy, but I am saying that he deserves a little bit more praise and a little bit more respect for what he's been able to accomplish. And when I say, let me finish the last thought. And so when I say he may have options, I'm not saying he's, he may inherit a top 5 or top 10 program. But what I am saying is that there'll be teams out there that will say, I'll take a guy that is doing that, and say to themselves, all right, there's guys who get coaching jobs all the time who are 500 or below. So I'm not saying that he has to be elite, but he's doing something good enough where somebody will say, I'll take that over some of the other options.
Just to be clear, first of all, what grade have I assigned him for his work?
You gave him an A.
Okay. So not really ignoring what he's doing, right? I mean, if I've given him an A and I've lauded his praise, the praising I've given him for what he's done this year is ever flowing. Wouldn't say I'm overlooking what he's done. The conversation about who the next coach should be, I think, has a lot less to do with what's happened this year versus what can you expect to happen in the years to come when the overall task of the job becomes much more substantial than merely managing the team from day to day. I think it's a bit disingenuous to completely point at the Rice game as like a data point. They were awful that night. It was literally the day of Chris Beard's arrest. There were questions about whether or not that game would even be played leading up to like 5 minutes before the game. It was like, are they really going to play a game on the night? And they did, and they weren't good. And if that was the vision of that team that one had for the rest of the season, then I think you make about 1 billion excellent points. It's hard for me, though, to not recall that the week before Chris Beard got arrested, the team was undefeated. They went into a game against Illinois that they ended up blowing in the Final Four. One of the only games all season where in the Final 4 minutes of a game, Texas really just unraveled. They're usually very good in the final 4 minutes of a game, which is why I like this team in the tournament. But there was a question going into that Illinois game as to whether or not Texas was going to be number one in the rankings and whether or not it was genuinely the best team in the country. They had dusted off Gonzaga. They'd been playing really well. Illinois stopped that discussion with an overtime loss. At that point, though, that next week, they were like 7th in the country. So this isn't poo-pooing the job that Rodney Terry did. It's merely pointing out that what he inherited was a top 10 level team with more experience than any team in the history of the program. Now, what he did with that, you're right, it's hard to do better than a number 2 seed, a conference tournament championship. The question is, what does it look like when you don't take over, when you're working with something other than a top 10 team with the most experience in the country? What does it look like then? And that's what Texas has to hire for. It's hiring for 2020. It's like some of these athletes in pro football when they're like, hey, I just turned in my 2,000-yard season, pay me. And the team's like, well, we're not paying you for last year. We're paying you for 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. And sometimes there can be just a complete split of opinions as to what a player's worth is, depending on the age and everything else. I just think that the job is so much harder than the things that he's been doing. It's not everybody's great. Some guys are great number 2s and awful number 1s. And sometimes number 1s can't be number 2s. It was one of the things we talked about with Gary Patterson was how well he was able to do a smaller job without much of an ego. Ultimately, I just don't know. I think Anwar, there's a better chance than not that he gets the job, because I think this Texas basketball team is going to make a run in the tournament. I think they were given a very good draw. And if they were to get to the Final Four, that would be in Houston. So Texas right now is staring at a possible national championship run in ways that maybe it hasn't in a long time. Maybe since 2003, when they were a number 1 seed and landed in the San Antonio Regional and were able to win their 2 games to go to the Final Four in front of a huge Texas audience. Here's the wild card on board, and this is what I want to get your reaction to. Chris Del Conte likes being popular. Like that more than anything else.
Likes?
Loves it.
Okay.
He loves being like the captain of the ceremony. He likes being the guy that everybody looks at. I mean, he enjoys being popular. And I am reminded of during the Eyes of Texas situation when he wasn't out in front. I just thought to myself, how miserable must he be? He can't go on to Twitter and like interact, and he likes being front and center. I think if Texas gets to the Sweet 16 and beyond, I think the popular move will be to keep Rodney Terry. By all means, I don't think I have the popular opinion. I don't know that I don't think of Chris Del Conte as the guy that goes against the public wave of momentum. I don't know that I look at Chris Del Conte as the type of guy that says, you know what, I'm going to ignore the popular opinion and I'm going to do the unpopular thing because I think it's the right thing to do. I mean, I don't know that that's who he instinctively is. And I think that is a big feather in Rodney Terry's cap going into the tournament when we think about this job long term.
Well, there's a couple of things I wanted to go into. So I will start with the last thing and then go to that. If Rodney Terry gets them to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, something like that, Chris don't count. Look, every time Dickie V does a game, I feel like half the game, all he says is, "You just like, why you got to give this guy a job, baby? Like, how can you not hire this guy?" Like,
you know what's curious about that, Anwar? I'm sorry, and I'll be quiet. Vital never once mentions one negative, and it's so when Vital does that, if you have a working brain, you have to ask yourself, why does he never bring up any of the other stuff? And if you figure out the answer to that question, you'll realize why every time Dick Vitale talks about it, he's intellectually disingenuous with the presentation of whether or not Terry should be. He never mentions a negative once. Not once.
Dick Vitale doesn't mention anything negative about anyone, though. That's not what he does. He will never point out negatives. Every coach is a good coach. Every kid he loves. Every guy, like, he's just more of a positive, I don't want to say caricature but I mean, kind of in some ways. So you don't take that serious. But what I'm saying is that, there will be a sentiment if he gets this team far. As far as what Texas should do. Like, now, I'm not saying that's ultimately the correct answer. They've got there's like I said, someone explained it to me. A lot of these coaches nowadays have buyouts that are massive. These coaches are so then for what Texas might be able to get, you still got to look at those guys and say, how big is the buyout? Do you want to drop 20 million? Do you want to drop 25? Do you care about basketball that much where you say to yourself, it's worth spending 15 to 20 mil to get a guy because we just really, really want to be that successful in basketball? I don't know at the end of the day if that's where the priority is. I feel like basketball is one of these programs that, if it goes great, awesome. You love it. Everyone follows it. But how much of an investment are you willing to make? I mean, the Chris Beard thing was the perfect. I mean, that was the prodigal son coming home. So that made all the sense in the world down the road.
What do you do in your dream hire? Isn't the dream?
Yeah. But I mean, do you, for instance, do you then say go down the road and get like a Kelvin Sampson out of Houston? And do you say to yourself, okay, this is worth whatever his buyout is to bring in a guy who's got some Texas connections, so on and so forth? Do you go for a John Calipari? You know what I'm saying? Do you go for Scott Drew? Like, those become the questions. And then, how much, again, for the buyouts that are there, how bad do you want it? I think that becomes the interesting thing. Now, with the argument I think that could be made for Rodney Terry, it's kind of the argument that we can make in football, which is, people will say, well, what about recruiting and recruiting at a high level? But NIL is the recruiter nowadays. Like that is your recruiter. So if you've got the dollars like you do at Texas, and you've got the people who are saying, okay, we're willing to invest in basketball, then yeah, you will be able to. It is not just about sitting on the, catch. We've evolved past the point where it's just about sitting on the couch and eating mama's cooking and just being a good old guy. Even mama's like, okay, so let's talk to me about that check. Like my was like, I'm glad you enjoy the food, but are you going to pay my son or are you going to pay our family? So I think there's an NIL conversation to be had as far as an equalizer, as far as what he was able to do versus what he could do with NIL dollars. And the only other thing I would say, Catch, the last thing I'll say, I'll let you jump back in, is I know you say you keep saying he inherited someone else's team and Chris Beard's team, and that is factually correct. But why I would give him credit for it is Steve Sarkisian inherited a 7-win team that blew the doors out against Colorado, and they won 5 games the following year, right? So sometimes you can inherit, and I'm not saying he inherited a great team by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think he inherited a 5-win team either, right? And so, but then we saw TCU with Sonny Dykes inherits a 5-win team and gets them to, the playoffs. So there's something to be said, that just as relates to what do you say? Whatever the ship, I forget what the word of that thing is, but even though you inherit it, you still got to be able to do something with it. And that's the last thing I'll just go as far as giving some credit for that. That's all.
We'll say that Sonny Dykes did more than just inherit Gary Patterson's team. I mean, that was a 365-day like job that included incoming transfers, and there's just a little bit more to it. It would be like if Sonny Dykes inherited Gary Patterson's team in September and not 9 months before. I think you make an interesting point with NIL. I think there's an NIL conversation to be had, and I'm not so sure that it's not rhetorical in nature because I don't know that answers have formulated yet. I'm watching the Texas baseball team play right now, sweep over the weekend against Manhattan, step in the right direction, but it's not a team that many expect at this point to make the NCAA tournament, which is crazy to say. Like, maybe it's too early to decide that, but they're just above 500 after a 5-0 week against lesser teams. They're just above 500. And one of the reasons why I'm hearing Texas baseball fans talk about why it is. And Texas baseball, as great as it is as a program, isn't yet thriving on the NIL side. I mean, I paid Ivan Melendez last year for an OB athlete deal. And when the baseball team, when the Statesman did an overview of the NIL money spent in every sport, that OB deal with Ivan Melendez represented like a 33% chunk. And that's not good. We did not pay Ivan Melendez so much money that you would want it to be 33% of the NIL amount that went out on the sport. I bring that up because I think of Texas basketball and Texas baseball from a thirst standpoint, from the alumni, they're pretty similar. I mean, Texas baseball matters. I don't know yet that Texas basketball yet is an NIL superstar. Now, Chris Beard did a good job with transfers. And you think about Hunter from Iowa State, and he was certainly one of the more touted guys. I don't know yet that they built this team necessarily through NIL as like the major weapon that it has. It will be interesting because in my mind, if it's Texas or Kentucky for a kid, Kentucky will always be the more thirsty from a potential bag of money standpoint than Texas in basketball. So I wonder just how substantial the backing through NIL for basketball the Texas program has. I think it will be one of the things over the next 5 years that becomes really important. I think you're right. I think maybe that sport hasn't quite caught up as much as football has because generally speaking, there's more money in football. But if you're going to be a top 5, a top 10 job, if the expectation is to compete with Kansas or moving forward Kentucky for championships, you're going to need money in NIL to win kids over. And I wonder what it looks like on the Texas side of that with so much focus in football. Baseball has suffered because of it. If you hear Texas fans, knowledgeable ones, talk about it, and I wonder where basketball fits into that. Not today, but 5 years from now, is Texas a top 5 basketball school in NIL contributions? Is it top 10? Is it top 25? I don't know.
No, it's a like I said, it's the question. Like I said, I'll be interested to see going forward is because to me, Catch, that if they did go with Rodney, then that's the thing you would have to lean on.
I agree with that for sure.
Hey, all right, we're going to that. That means we've got to have guys who are willing to pay. Because the one thing is, like to your point, Chris Del Conte wants to be liked, and he doesn't want to make bad hires. And he's a guy that, when things weren't going good in Steve Sarkisian's first year, Chris Del Conte wasn't front and center. Like he'll take Chris Del Conte, he'll take a back seat when things aren't going well. Like you won't see that newsletter for weeks. And then you'll and then all of a sudden that newsletter will pop up, weeks later after when things are going well. So he don't like that smoke. Like that's just not who he is about. He wants to be the guy that's giving you the whiskey and being real popular and all that other kind of thing. So, but it's got to be, I want to say this, and I've got something else if we move on, something else I want to react to. But on an offshoot of this, it's got to me though, Catch, it's got to be a move that no matter what, it has to be the best candidate. Like at the end of the day. So I do agree with you with that. It can't be a move off of emotions. It can't be about the moment. I do agree. It can't be, there's certain things like, yes, you may have had, a good season. And that's why I say that. I know, like, in that season for Rodney Terry may be something that sets him up at a mid-major program somewhere else. And that's great for him. Like, it is great. Rodney Terry also got a raise not too long ago, right? So,
can I give you a bad metaphor?
What's that?
I'm going to use you as the example.
Oh, shit.
It would be, look, because you were acknowledged, you and like, it's Eric that's been divorced, correct?
Yeah, me and Eric, we dueling banjos, man.
Be like if you met a woman today.
Uh-huh.
And y'all started to date.
Okay.
And like for 3 months, it was great. And then you were like, will you marry me? If she never asked or thought about everything prior to 3 months, as she made her decision about what to do for the rest of her life, we would think to ourselves, if you took the names off the platter, like maybe stop for a second and just weigh everything out. I think I feel like a parent, if I had a kid who wanted to get married young, and I would be like, whoa, you got to think about the history. This person has had a bunch of bad experiences. Like, could it happen again? Are you too young? What are you going to do in the future? Like, there's just, I just feel like.
Can I give you a good one? Even
yes.
Building off that metaphor, it would be like me asking her to get married, and she just ignoring my past history of divorces and saying to herself, "Sure, I'm sure this could be different, right?" Like,
while you're at the same time doing the same thing.
Correct. So, so yes, but here's the thing. I'm the one with the baggage, technically. She is not. So technically.
That's why I say it goes both ways.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny.
What was that last thing you wanted to get into?
I have another overreaction, though.
Let's hear it.
It was a slight comment that Sarkisian made on Friday, but it totally builds off of the conversation that we're having. And of course, even to the success of the Texas women's basketball team, which is at some point, the Texas football team has to hold up their end of the bargain as relates to success on the 40 acres. Like, and this is cool. Like, this is extra, right? What we're talking about as far as Rodney Terry, the Texas men's basketball team. This is fun. Like, this is fun. This is extra stuff that we're getting. Texas women's basketball team being ranked number 4 in their bracket, getting to the championship game, losing to Iowa State, but still them having that success this year, what Vic Schaefer has been able to do over there with that program. That's great, right? I mean, these are fun things, and there's other programs that are doing great. There we hear about that. It's Directors Cups, right? And we'll hear about that at some point, but football's got to hold up their end of the bargain. And Sarkisian made mention of that, Catch. Like in my column, he did talk about, he started off talking in his introductory thing, and it's like, I'd be remiss if I don't mention the success of these other programs. And this was before Texas had played Kansas and won. So he had mentioned them beating Kansas previously, Vic Schaefer. And then, and he said, and at some point, he did say they're going to have to hold up their end of the bargain. So that just my overreaction is, this is great conversation. I'm enjoying us talking about the winning and the success of other programs. But at some point, we need to be having these conversations about the football team.
The football team reminds me of, if you've ever been around like a youth, like an 8-year-old sports league, and the coach of one of those teams tells his team to like run to the fence and back for warm-ups, right? Warm up your legs. So the whole team takes off and runs down, and they like touch the fence, and they come back, and the whole team's done racing, and there's like 3 kids in the back who are just like, like they're having a hard time running back and forth. that Texas football right now has been the team that's dragging amongst all the Texas sports. The other Texas sports are running and touching the fence, playing at a high level. Texas is that 8-year-old with asthma who's struggling to get to the other teams. They got to stop being that person. They have to be one of the leaders at the front of the pack that touch the fence and come back to the coach without it feeling like we might have to call 911 for them. And, Texas football team's 13-12 in the last 2 years. Like, that's not good. Not good enough. Certainly not. I mean, nobody would. So I think Sarkisian's at a point now in his tenure where he's like, what if you put a microphone in front of the kid who was among the last to show up? Because think about it. Texas won that National Directors Cup last year. Football didn't contribute at all to it. Yeah. They won the Directors Cup with no football contribution. Yeah. Now, they'll get a little contribution this year, and believe me, Chris Del Conte, because he likes that Directors Cup.
Oh, he loves that.
He will like it that football gave something. Like, something. I'm with you on more. I don't think it's even an overreaction. I think it's just a reaction. Come on, football. Can't every team on campus be doing the lifting, and the 800-pound gorilla is like, can't get off the ground? By the way, real quick, super chat from Eric. I didn't want to leave him out. Going back to Ketch's comment, 10-year sample size of Terry as head coach. Can't say the same about Sark as a head coach. Sometimes you have to go back to being an assistant to get your groove back and catch a little luck. Eric, are you sure we can't say the same thing about Sark as a head coach? Or can't we say? Okay, so can't we say the same? Yes, you can say the same about Sark as a head coach. Sorry, I read that wrong, Eric. Yeah, I mean, it's why it's important to Eric's point, Anwar. Yes, we can. It's why Texas, the football team, has to really start holding its own. It's why this is such an important season. Because at some point in football, everybody's going to stop and say, hey, so why aren't we winning a whole bunch?
Yeah. I mean, that's what as we talked about stuff in the spring and this and to that effect. Like we
want Rodney Terry to coach the football team.
I mean,
build it, Sark. You build it, and then Rodney's going to come in and after the Alabama game, and we win it out.
So under that premise, then that's like Sark leaving mid-season, like after like week 3, and then like who takes over, like Pete K or Kyle Flood or something like that, and then you're kind of like, what do you do, in that situation? And if you use that analogy, it'd be really interesting. But yeah, Catch it. Like we've been saying it, for years. We've been saying it since 2009. To be quite honest with you, that's how long the conversation has been as far as holding up that end of the bargain. And the spring football conversations that we'll have are having, and those are good. It's probably some positive steps in the right direction. You got to start somewhere. But like I said, it's these things, Catch, also serves as reminders, for where the football program is, and seeing guys come in and find ways to build, find ways to have success. And then, this being a football school, you just look to yourself and it's like, it's got to happen. This has got to happen. This has got to be the year. And I still go back to it, Catch, and I will stay on this all season, and again, I'll put it in the air quotes. It will never get any easier to win a conference title than it will be in 2023 for Texas, because once you go into the SEC, it will be a lot harder. That schedule will be a lot more difficult. It's going to be tough. So in order to have a easy. This is it. Like, to me, 2023 is when it needs to happen, because what's going to happen when we get into 2024, we're going to start talking about the new things, right? And so you kind of almost have to hit the reset button on expectations. And this is the thing that, I've asked you about this before, and Texas fans have debated it before. The definition of success for the Texas Longhorn program, and you've talked about this when they go into the SEC. Here in the Big 12, it's always 10 or more. I don't know if you can just say that year in and year out in that conference. Like, I think you're setting yourself up for some disappointment early on if you go, man, if we don't win like 10 years, man, this sucks. Like, you know how hard it is to win 10 games in the SEC when you've got Bama, Georgia, just go down the list, everyone on your schedule. And that's why I think it makes it this year so crucial for this program and where it's going.
I agree. I'm stuck between two thoughts. There's a comment in the chat that I kind of want to respond to, but it takes us completely away from football. So I'm just going to stick with us.
You sure? I'm okay with petty today.
Well, it's not petty. David makes a point in the chat that I don't think is a bad one, but I think is worthy of 30 seconds of conversation. He says a case can be made that Coach Terry has established the foundation of UT's future basketball teams by maintaining the commitments of Roland Holland and A.J. Johnson. Both could start at Texas next year. Now, he's not wrong with that. I would simply say that the thing that is the biggest piece of fool's gold in college basketball are five-star guys, because you don't win in the tournament with five. Greg Brown was a five-star guy. He was a starter. Those guys don't win you college basketball championships.
Mo Bamba.
The ones, there's a long list of guys like playing in the NBA right now or overseas. That Texas had lottery picks. Rick recruited. Shaka could recruit. Those college basketball rankings often fail way more than college football rankings for those reasons, because those guys will come and then maybe stay a year or two and you don't get out of them what you need. I would make the argument, David, that being able to build a team similar to this year's team should be the goal. I mean, this year's team's not the most talented. They don't have a first-round pick on this team yet. And they're probably the only great UT team that's ever existed that doesn't have that doesn't have a TJ Ford or a LaMarcus Aldridge or a DJ Augustine or somebody on that level. I think older players is where it's at. I am, as a basketball fan now, Anwar, I really do care less about the five stars in recruiting and the 1 year. Because Greg Brown was a bill that we were sold, that once we got it was like, that wasn't as much fun as I thought it was going to be. Came for a year, he was okay, went to the NBA and was like, they kept Shaka an extra year for Greg Brown's freshman season. So I get where you're going, Daniel, with the 2 5 stars and being able to hold on to those guys. I'm not against you with that. But if that's the foundation of the future, then the foundation is going to have a hard time winning championships without the other part strongly interwoven. And it's the part about Coach Terry as a program builder that we just don't know about. Ronnie Terry's a good recruiter. He is. So if he were to coach at Texas, it's part of his value. He's a good recruiter. There's a reason why Texas has employed him under multiple coaching staffs during his career. He's good at his job. It's just that the head coaching job is so different than an assistant's, and there's just a lot more that goes with it. And it's the part of the stuff that we don't see day in and day out because they don't televise it for 2 hours with shot clocks and game clocks, that it's hard to know just how good he is at the other stuff. And that includes me. Like, I can point to his record, but I don't know the circumstances, and did he have injuries, and sometimes bad luck's a part of it too. Ask Shaka. He's got a 2 seed this year. People are saying he might go to the Final Four, but we know what happened at Texas, which was ultimately a performance that was worthy of him not keeping his job. Okay.
Can I ask one question before you go off for that?
Yeah.
Just one last one, just out of curiosity, and if you don't know the everyone on assistants, because I don't know all the assistants on the current staff, men's basketball staff. If they don't name Rodney Terry and they name somebody else, whether it's like a Chris, I'm looking on here. I think Chris Ogden, maybe there's whoever else they could have gone with, right? And not Terry. Do you think they're still as successful?
Yes. I think that what this team needed was a stabilizing force, someone that could just make these guys, remind them every day, you're really good. If we stick together, we can do this and not make it about them. I think this team was top 10 in the country when he took over. They're top 10 in the country at this point in the season. I kind of think about this from the Jerry Jones school of there are 500 coaches who could take the Dallas Cowboys of the early 1990s and be the head coach, and they could win a Super Bowl. And he proved it by putting Barry Switzer. They were good enough to overcome Barry Switzer as their pro head coach. I kind of think that about this year's team. I think there are probably 500 guys in the world in college basketball that could have taken over this team with all of this experience and done a really good job with it. I still give Rodney Terry an A, but I think there actually are a lot of really high-quality basketball coaches out there that if you give them this team, they won't mess it up.
Does it wanted to ask? I know we're getting close to the hour, but I just wanted to kind of throw that in there.
I got a football thing that's from the first 3 days, and I think if I'm a Texas football fan, this is really exciting. The 2023 recruiting class, they're not really playing around. Those dudes, there's like 14 of them that showed up early. And it feels, I think half of them are already on the 2 deep. Yes, there are circumstances involved in this that help create it. Injuries that have opened the door for some of these guys to get earlier playing time than maybe they would have expected. But Arch Manning, second string after a week. Jonte Cook, second string after a week. And the way people talk about him, I wonder how much he stays. I wonder if that's a kid that doesn't start getting some first-team reps. CJ Baxter, same. Getting second-team reps, but some ones as well. Peyton Kirkland is kind of out of nowhere the second-team left tackle, and I don't know if he even has any competition. You've got guys at linebacker. Anthony Hill's an obvious one. Youth is being served for Texas football right now.
DeAndre Moore, by the way.
What's that?
DeAndre
Moore, exactly. Another one. It shows that I think the football team still needed talent to come in, that these guys are just skipping right almost to the front. But that they are means really good things for the future, because you kind of look at all of these guys and go, okay, well, if you pretty much acclimated and doing it from day one of the first set of practices you take as a true freshman, I feel pretty good about you're going to be okay and good enough. It also points to the importance of recruiting super blue chips. And I know you've heard me do this song and dance a lot, but Arch, super blue chip. CJ Baxter, super blue chip. Anthony Hill, super blue chip. Jonte Cook, super blue chip. Even someone like DeAndre Moore was like a borderline super blue chip, depending on the recruiting service. Like, this is why you recruit these badass football players, because more times than not, if there aren't injuries involved, if they're not knuckleheads, they end up proving statistically why they were rated the way they were. And this football team needs it. Like, this team needs Baxter, and Moore and Kirkland and Cook and Hill. This year they're needed. And I just can't say enough about how impressed I am that so many young guys are coming into the team and just not even waiting a second before they're factors.
I mean, there's a couple of things because you're 100% right. First and foremost, Catch, I feel like nowadays, for the most part, Catch, you tell me if you think I'm wrong. I feel like if you're a kid that shows up in the summer and for your freshman season, just don't expect to play. Like you just not. That's not going to happen because too many guys are showing up in January to get a head start, and these guys are showing up ready-made. Like these guys look like they look the part. Like Jonte Cook already looks the part. I think I told a story. I think it may have been in one of our war rooms, but I don't think I verbalized it here. I was at a practice. It must have been on Monday, and someone that comes up to me during the practice and they go, we expected Jonte Cook to come in at 175. He's at 184. And they were excited about that. Like they were giddy about it. And they wanted to make a point to me to like, that's how good this guy is. And look how impressed he is. The work that they put in just to get here. And then, like you said, you got guys coming in, Catch, not, who, CJ Baxter is getting, we've talked about Jaden Blue getting some run, but CJ Baxter's getting run, and Keelan Robinson isn't there. Jonathan Brooks isn't there. And, Coach Sarkisian's got enough talent when he doesn't really have to worry about the loyalty thing. He's going to just play his guys, and they've done a great job of not only identifying talent, but identifying talent that they can plug and play pretty quickly. I mean, again, back to Jonte, I mean, he's fielding punts. At this moment, so is A.D. Mitchell, so is Xavier Worthy, so is John J. Moore. But think about Catch the punt return, like a freshman, like you're gonna let that guy in ball security and all the kind of things that usually go along with it. I think the staff has done a great job from a recruiting standpoint, identifying the talent standpoint, and I feel like Catch every guy, and I've said this before, and I feel like in all the years I've covered this team, I feel like a lot of the guys who have started have just been there because they didn't have anyone else better. Like, not because they were great players, it's because they didn't have anyone else better to put in there. And now I look at it and I'm like, oh, you got a lot of options. You got a lot of guys who who can play. And now, Catch, it really becomes the Sarkisian thing has to be telling guys, hey, you may not play a lot, but look at a Roshan Johnson. Like you almost got to sell it now in order for guys to kind of hang around because they do have that much talent.
Onward, first of all, yes. I feel like Meg Ryan in When Harry Met Sally. I'm climaxing my yeses right now at the diner to all of that. The thing that I mostly wanted to respond to was your point about call it the DJ Campbell rule. If you want to play as a true freshman, you better be showing up early. Because 14 dudes showed up early this year, which means the guys that didn't will show up. And it's like, yeah, DJ Campbell, you might be as good as Cole Hudson. But you know what? Cole Hudson's been here for 9 months. Went through the spring, we've seen him over and over and over again, and you're starting from scratch. The bigger point I wanted to make about that truth that I think is really starting to exist, it will be interesting in, say, 3 to 5 years when we have a large enough sample size of, because we really are in the infancy stage of this many guys showing up early every year. It will be, how I do the data crunch and it's like this percentage of 4-stars got drafted by NFL teams it will be interesting to see if there's a huge difference between success versus guys that show up early versus guys that don't. And I don't know, it's an idea of a story that I can't probably write yet. But probably in 3 or 4 years, I'll have enough of time will have built up where we can look at all of the recruiting classes, let's say, from the last 7 or 8 years and say, how did it differ? How wide was the gap, if any, for success percentages when you look at early versus late? Because I'm looking at the last year's recruiting class. It's the guys that didn't play that stand out to me for the bad reasons. And most of those guys didn't come in early. Like Brennan Thompson is famously a freshman in this recruiting class that kind of struggled a little bit to adjust from his level of high school football to college football. He was a guy that came in later. DJ Campbell couldn't ever overtake Cole Hudson for that offensive line starting job. And I think the primary reason was because Cole Hudson came in early and DJ Campbell did not. So I think not only the point that you make is spot on, but we may be starting to come into an age where if you don't come in early, when you do come in, you've got one arm tied behind your back. I don't know that to be factual, but just looking ahead at the class that they just signed, it's easy right now to see the guys who are definitely going to have success because they're already asserting themselves. And I don't think it's going to be like that in the fall. I don't think we're going to see very many true freshmen from the remaining batch come in and be on the 2 deep from Jump Street. I don't know what position that happens at. And I don't know who those players would be.
Yeah, I mean, Catch, like, it is, again, zero disrespect to what I'm about to say. I'm just going to use him as a good example. When Sarkisian was talking about, like, the running backs and he was talking about Jaden Blue, he started saying how he feels really comfortable with the running back room and what they be able to accomplish. And then he also mentioned, and it was like one of the last things he mentioned was about, Trey Wisner will be here later on. But you don't expect Trey Wisner to probably play when you see all the guys who are ahead of him right now and getting all the snaps and the reps and everything to that effect. You just say to yourself, okay, he's going to have to come in. He's going to have to sit. He's going to have to learn and kind of hope for the best going forward. It's going to be like that. Catch it just, these guys are it's
Trey
just too competitive.
Wisner is in a race with CJ Baxter. And he's given CJ Baxter like a 25-meter head start.
Yes.
I would argue that, and look, I hate even saying this because, and I felt this way with Arch too. Let that kid enjoy his last semester in high school and go to prom and skip school a few times to go to the lake or something. Like, let him have some fun before he has to, devote his life to this thing.
Yeah.
And I want Trey Wisner to be able to have that as a human being. But the reality is the best chance in his career to make a mark and open eyes and make Steve Sarkisian think about, I have to include this guy, were if he had showed up early when we're practicing right now.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting some second team reps. He's filling into that Keelan Robinson's absence means Trey Wisner might be getting those reps. And now would be the time. And in the fall, everybody will be back. The guys are being cautious with will be back. The opportunities will be gone unless they reopen up again with injuries. And it's probably like that in other positions. Like Peyton Kirkland comes in. There's really not – he kind of takes over left tackle by default. We don't even know if he's any good. He's really, he's second team left tackle, but he's had 1 day in pads. So who knows?
Yeah.
But I know that the guy, if there was another left tackle coming in, their ability to challenge Kirkland for that backup spot is really weighted against them by waiting this long, because it's not an insignificant thing to go through 50. At some point in the fall, coaches start thinking about the regular season.
Yes.
They just do. Especially if you've got you're playing Alabama early. You can't dick around. It can't be like a week before the Alabama game. You're still Hey, let's let the kids scrimmage today. Everybody else just sit back.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you want. It's why the past couple of years when we've seen quarterback announcements made, we've seen them fairly early in August, because the coaches, they want, whether it was Hudson Card 2 years ago or Quinn Ewers a year ago, like they want this team to start hitting on all cylinders so that it can start the season running instead of walking. It's like that at every position. Like, you know what I mean? When you show up in August, the clock of the regular season works against you. Whereas in the spring, they'll do all kinds of crazy things in the spring. Hey, we're just going to move CJ Baxter to defense for a week just to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
I just made that up. Nobody go report that. Like, that's not real.
Catches reporting.
Exactly. Like we've seen, it's not completely outside the box for them to just take random players and be like, we're just going to see what it looks like. That doesn't really happen in August. Spring is the time to make an impression while they're creatively open-minded. You get to August, and creatively open-minded becomes almost single task minded. It's get ready for the games. And, I will probably look at the numbers on WAR to see if I have a large enough sample size to continue this discussion. I don't think that I do, because there just haven't been that many classes where we look at, I think in one of the last couple of years, I can't remember which year it was, but I think like one guy showed up early or a couple. So it almost needs to be a national breakdown. That's a lot of work. I'm thinking about it, but man, that's a lot of work.
No, that had to be a group email to everyone in Rivals. But Catch, think about this though. You brought it up. Like, think about Arch, who was earlier last year contemplating, should he stay for his senior season and just, play on a basketball team and then just enjoy being a kid. And then decides it was kind of during the football season that he would early enroll. And now look at the opportunity that he has. The opportunity that he would not have had he stayed, right? And so now there's a second component too that you're starting to realize that, guys are going to be coming off of injuries off from that last season. So they're, December or something. So you might have a guy in your position group that is just sitting to the side and he's rehabbing for the next few months and coaches are taking it easy. And now you've got the opportunity to slide in there as that person rehabs and tries to get well and show them what you have. And you see that on the offensive line. We're seeing that, CJ Baxter, like we're seeing that, with Arch. Those things are now all of a sudden like, oh, there's now multiple reasons for you to do it, not only to get ahead of your peers, but potentially get ahead of those current teammates who are injured.
Back to Arch in this discussion. In general, during the season, it's more valuable I think this can be for every position, but we'll certainly keep it with quarterbacks. It's more important in your development to be second team or scout team.
Yeah.
Second team's quality reps. Scout team is mostly doing the other team's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It makes Arch's decision a smart one after 3 practices. Because if he didn't show up early, Malik's absence doesn't even really cause a shockwave. Charles Wright could be taking the reps with the 2s and nobody would blink. Mm-hmm. Everybody would be like, well, Malik needs to make sure he comes back and gets some spring. I think that's how we probably get back, take part in some of the spring, and you'll have an advantage over Arch. As it is, Arch is taking the advantage over Malik. He just is. And it's imperative at some point that Malik be able to get on the field as quick as possible. We've had this conversation. because what hangs in the balance is for both of these young quarterbacks is the difference between quality of second team reps, which I'm not even talking about being one step closer to starting. I'm just talking about day in and day out, every day of practice, who gets the better action. And right now, Arch is getting second team reps, and the decision to come in early may mean that in a season where maybe he doesn't even play that much, right? Like maybe Arch plays in 3 games, he redshirts, it works out great for everybody. But the difference between him and a season like that, taking all the second team reps versus scout team reps for 6 months, is a pretty big deal in his evolution. Because if the idea is that Arch will start to really compete for the starting job in 2024, being able to work with Jonte Cook, at the moment, A.D. Mitchell, Casey Kane, or the drop down, we're on the scout team, you're working out with Jaden Alexis, you're working out with Ryan Niblett when he shows up as a freshman in the fall. Like, just the quality of guys you're working with and going up against is significantly different. More times than not, the second team quarterback scrimmages against the first team defense, that gets you ready to play college football, whereas the scout team guy sits and watches more times than not when the main guys are practicing. So it's this whole thing's an advertisement for guys. If you're going to be a major college football player, come in early behooves you. In this case for Arch Manning, we might look back in 2 or 3 years and say it turned out to be the most important decision that he made. Coming in early and allowing himself the opportunity to practice day in and day out against quality. Whereas if he decided, I want to play basketball, I want to go to prom, his first year at Texas would probably look significantly different.
Yeah, I mean, as it's shaping up right now, I've said it before, but, Arch Manning is participating in more spring practices than Malik Murphy has. That's just the reality. It's 3-0 at this moment. And so the advantages of, okay, well, maybe Malik knows the playbook, but he's not practicing, so that doesn't necessarily help you. And so as now all of a sudden Arch finds himself in a real competition battle, like for real, because right now he's getting a chance to, catch. If he's getting a chance to be out there and throwing passes and working out with guys and getting to learn, and now I'm getting to coach you on the field. It's starting to you will get an upper hand in this kind of battle. And now all of a sudden you go from a guy who's probably just a third option, throughout all year if you stayed in high school, to now you're that guy that if Quinn, has to come out for, a helmet or go back in the locker room, you're playing. Like that's the difference. That's literally the difference. We saw Quinn get injured last year. Knock on wood, it doesn't happen this year, but or at worst, you're the guy you might be the guy in the season opener that when the starters are pulled, you're the guy that's playing all in the fourth quarter.
And Donovan Brooks at running back. And
yeah,
the significance of that is that when you go into the next season, you put it on tape. You have a little bit of experience where in a case where it's zero experience versus some. We just got finished talking about the basketball team and how, in my opinion, that experience, they got dudes in their mid-20s. It's just crazy. And because you don't see that on the football side really ever. Christian Jones is like the only real old dude I can think of.
Yeah.
There are a lot of 6-year guys in the program anymore, but that's probably a good thing. And yeah, I don't know that I have much more to add in the discussion of the young guys and what we've already laid out. You want to wrap this thing up, or is there anything else football-wise you wanted to get into?
No, we'll have plenty more football discussions.
I have a football discussion for later in the week for us.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It's clickbaity as they come.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. That's a good tease.
As clickbaity as they come. Matter of fact, people might get mad at us because it's so clickbaity.
I mean, it's like Texas A&M, OU, Billy Lucci, mud wrestling, SEC. Like, I don't know what this is going to be, but I cannot wait. But by the way, everything on the internet, as you've always pointed out, is designed for clicks. So
it warms my heart that you said that, because it definitely ran through my head, and I thought, no, I say that like every day. So I'm not
everything on the internet. If people would say clickbait, everything on the internet. That's why you post stuff on social media. You want people to click on your photos and click on the meal that you posted, that you ordered, or the drinks, and or but you post things on Instagram. Like, everything's designed to click. Why do you see people taking a selfie and they keep erasing it? Because they want to have the best thing for someone to see and click on. So no, it's all right. I think the goal is to have things people want to click on.
Well, I will tell you. You want me to tell you?
Don't tell us, because someone else who's listening from another website will do it. They'll do the video today.
Well, that's very possible. So no clickbait reveals today. Just know that later this week, Anwar and I will do a very clickbaity discussion. It will involve Texas football and Steve Sarkisian.
Cannot wait.
That's all I
cannot wait. I cannot wait. Let's do it.
For now, I want to remind everybody, like this video, subscribe to the channel, do it right now. Smash that thumbs up button. And also, if you need your THC, your CBD needs, rogueshop.com. Use that promo code Orangebloods, 25% off. And you can, the quality of your life can improve with all of their products. Trust me, there are probably hundreds at this point on Orangebloods, at least 100, that could absolutely verify their lives have improved with a little bit of rogueshop.com. Also, take advantage of the free trial. Today might be the last day. I need to double check, but it's supposed to run out in the middle of this week, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe today. I'll double check. Use that promo code Texas30. Get 30 days. Get the rest of spring football on us. And then you can decide from there if you want to spend a couple of bucks a month. It's that simple. For Anwar Richardson and myself, you guys have a fantastic day. Now get your butt on over to Orangebloods and read all the content from the weekend. We will see you tomorrow with the Modcast.